Hey everyone, it's Sherri Barna here. Thanks for tuning into the Velocity podcast. Today we have a very special guest, and he's going to be talking about all things business and time management processes that will set you up for success. And at the end, we will tie marketing in as usual, and we're going to be talking about how to build a personal brand. This is Jeff Thibodeau, and we are excited to start this. So
yeah, thanks for having me. I mean, it's always exciting to get asked to do something like this because I do so much of it from your seat.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to being a guest today and having no pressure except to give some answers. So yeah, looking forward to bring some value to your listeners.
That's awesome. Well, do you want to quickly recap how you got to where you are and how you are now this big business professional that people are asking to speak places? You're always getting invited to speak, be on podcasts. Your videos are amazing.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I appreciate that. So yeah, going way back, I guess about 20 years, I was like a computer geek before that was cool. Yeah. It was like, I was kind of good at it. My parents always had tech around the house. So I went to school for computer programming, but then ended up getting a co-op job at a market research firm. Mm-hmm. So I took kind of the computer programming skills, but applied it in a different business use case instead of just pure programming. So I got to spend a decade in that industry, like writing surveys and doing focus groups and like kind of trying to figure out why people do what they do. So that was like my intro into the marketing world. And then when I had spent enough time there, I decided to totally pivot, and I got into the world of real estate sales, which was probably a mistake at the time because I didn't realize it was so much of a forward-facing sales business. Mm-hmm. I was bringing this like tech and marketing mindset to it, this back office type of mindset. But luckily that was just when tech was catching up. And so I was able to be a really early adopter of things like having a Facebook community page, making early YouTube videos, and seeing these ideas and being able to bring them over into a very traditional like belly to belly type of business. So I was able to have a lot of success through that, and then ended up also getting into like the coaching and training space. I got involved as a client first, just always looking for education like we were talking about earlier, and loved that space so much that I became part of the coaching organization and got trained to be a business coach, and along with that comes all the speaking and all this stuff. So that's, it's been like 22 years since I've been out of college, but it's just kind of all, it feels like it's all been a march to like this point where now I spend most of my time coaching, mentoring, training others. I'm not really like as much in the weeds of the business anymore. And yeah, I get to talk about quite a wide variety of topics, which is nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. So one topic I want to talk about, because when I speak to a lot of business owners, it's the same thing. It's like, man, I'm out of time again. It is Friday and I'm going to be working tomorrow. And it's no one seems to know how to manage their time. And it's not something we're necessarily like taught in school, maybe to a degree, but it's not something that for some reason there's a lot of books on, or maybe they're just boring books so no one reads them. I don't know. But today I thought it was funny you did a video about time management, and the reason I reached out originally was a time management post.
Yeah.
So do you want to just speak a little bit, like when you're coaching your clients, what do you say about that?
It's definitely a struggle for everybody, especially ambitious people, right? You're always going to be putting more on your plate. And I think the reason we don't get taught it is because in a typical employee relationship, your time is accounted for by someone else. It's pretty straightforward. So when you get into doing business for yourself, or even just trying to have a side hustle, or then throw in parenting or whatever into the mix and some hobbies, it can be really overwhelming. And anytime I've been kind of asked to speak or been given a chance to choose my topic, I choose this to speak about because I think it's something that I've tried to do really well for myself. And for me, sometimes I use the wrong word to describe things, but it comes from like a place of laziness. Where, the more technical word would be like efficiency. But I don't really like wasting time. I like to get things moving and get on, so I know that I've got my next piece of free time for myself, whether that's at work or home. So whenever I could get my hands on these techniques or the right books or the right mentors for learning time management for myself, I just like try to optimize it like crazy. Like I'm really trying to get as much done in as little time as possible so that I can go do something else, like do my hobbies or just do nothing and relax sometimes too.
Yeah, that's how I feel. Like this month, I actually I have in the past shut off notifications to Instagram just because I'm managing so many people's pages. It could be nonstop. But this month, my word, because I kind of choose a word for each month, I'm like, it's focus. So I've been shutting off my notifications, and it's crazy when you don't even have that little buzz to kind of just like pull you away for 1 second, how focused you can be. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been able to make, I feel like, such use of my time. And then if I wanted free time, that's great. And then sometimes it's just extra stuff, sales, whatever. But I'm like, man, I've been able to, like, I feel like my hours multiplied this month, and it was just shutting off and just being like, nope, I'm focused. I'm gonna read my emails like 4 times a day, just kind of like putting things in place for myself.
Yeah, for sure. Then I mean, notifications are such a killer, especially like some are necessary depending on your job. Maybe a phone call coming in from my wife that something an emergency is happening, like that's important. But when we install these apps by default, they usually turn notifications on. They're all trying to grab your attention, and it's gone over to the desktop. And I mean, even when I first opened my company, it was a completely open office floor plan, and that was great for the culture and for my role in the company. But in terms of me getting anything done, so I started having days I was in the office versus days I would work from home, and those work from home days were my power through. I'm showing up to the open office. I could start working on something, but no, I'm pretty much going to get interrupted. Like that's the point of having no doors anywhere.
Exactly. Yeah, that's funny. Okay, so what are some things that our listeners can put into place, like today, when it comes to time management, besides say notifications? But when people come to you and they're like, I'm just don't know what to do, I'm never finishing my work on time, do you give them practical advice, or do you have to like look over their schedule? Or
well, yeah, I mean, screen share me your calendar is usually a first step, but almost always it's the same. It's usually a pretty blank slate. I think in my business that I coach a lot is real estate agents, but I think this transfers over to a lot of entrepreneurial people. Is we spend a lot of time and mind space in the reactive mode. So we're kind of waiting for those notifications, whether it's from a customer or an employee or whatever fire is going on today. And that's how you feel like burnt out, because if you're an employee, you maybe that is your job, but you also don't have the job of running the company and doing the books and putting up the social media. And so I think it starts with, really breaking the day up into that, on the business versus in the business work. And many people don't actually allocate any time for that. We've just assume it's going to get done when we have some free time, which is never. So I think trying to figure out your natural workflow, for a real estate agent, it typically, your customers and clients really aren't asking much for you at 9 a.m. It's a very evenings and weekends type of business. So I encourage people to have, like powerful blocked out sessions in the morning where we're doing all the stuff that I think is important. And then that frees you up in the afternoons and evenings and weekends to do all that client-based work, the reactive work.
Okay. Yeah, reactive is really important, but I love the phrase because I say it all the time to people, like, you need to be working in your business and on your business. So what I say to people is, like, for me, I try not to book meetings right in the morning because I feel like I get a lot of focused work done. Whereas in the afternoon, I'm way more likely to be like, yeah, we can hit up a patio. I'm more friendly in the afternoon anyway, so it works out. I'm not a morning person. But whenever I talk to people, they'll be like, okay, I need this handled. Oh, I'm struggling over here. And I'm just like, all it comes down to is that you're so busy working in your business that you don't have time to like plan 6 months out or create a marketing plan, because when are you going to even implement it? So I find that's like a very, very common thing.
It's huge if, going the shift to, and, when you're in a small business too, you're got to wear a lot of different hats. And that's different than being an employee. You probably only have to wear one hat. And so having to break up the day or even the week into those different days, like maybe today, I coach this 2-person partnership that Tuesday and Thursday are their days where they get together, sit down at a desk, and they work on business stuff. And then Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and the weekends, they're just out running with client work. And so there's different ways to look at it, but usually it's the fact that it's not in there at all. And then the other thing is, if you don't have all the stuff that you love, like we go to work so that we can have a life, not the other way around, right? And so if you don't have, your hobbies and your time with your loved ones and all that stuff planned out, then in business where you're self-employed, commission-based, or entrepreneurial, work's going to bleed into all those things. And those people in your life, they might put up with it for a little while, or your hobbies might sit on a shelf for a few years, but eventually it's going to affect things. And that was never anyone's goal getting into a business like this. It was to have a better life. So I think a lot of intention around, I always say, like, time really is our only asset. It blips by every minute, it's gone. That one's in the history books. You can always make more money. You can always start another business, but we can't get back these minutes or hours. So really using them with intention.
I like that because I was in a meeting today. This woman excused herself, went to the washroom, threw up. Fortunately, we all heard it. She came back down and she's just pouring sweat. And then her boss was like, just go home. And it's not worth it. And she's like, no, it's okay. I can stay. And I was like, no, like, go home. You need to rest. Like, you're not so important that you have to push through. Right. I'm like, we need to take care of ourselves. It was just a funny, like, because I'm not used to that situation. If I feel sick, I'm staying home or whatever, because I have a different mindset, a similar one to you. But I was just like, oh my goodness, this is a funny look into like how businesses are run. And she had a compassionate boss that wasn't like, no, you're staying. So I was just like, oh my goodness, like it's so important to rest, to have fun, and that gives energy for the work. Because I can't work 90-hour weeks. Like, once in a while I'll have a long day or whatever, but then I'm exhausted and I'm not actually as productive as if I just work my set hours. I go home, spend time with my family, have my fun, go to sleep, wake up, and then I'm like energized to do it again.
Well, and that's that efficiency too. Like the amount of hours one works is less important than what you achieve per day or per week or whatever. So that's the way I like to think about it too. Like that's why I was never really a good employee for other people, because I was like, I had it all backwards in my head as a young man. I was like, what's the point of working any harder? My paycheck's the same.
Yeah.
I'm not getting promoted or anything like that. As soon as I became self-employed, the whole wiring changed. And I was just like, whoa, wow, if I could get my whole day done in 3 hours, then I could be off hiking in the field. I could be, reading a new book or whatever, having some me time.
Yeah.
So the whole incentive structure changed. But I think a lot of people don't carry that over. I see a lot of people in like a place where you should be motivated to get a lot of work done, just hanging around doing nothing.
I know. That's okay. So that's how I feel. Even like I don't homeschool my kids; they go to school. But when my friends who homeschool, they're like, "No, we're done in like 3 hours, and then we go hike and we do all this fun stuff." And I'm like, "Oh, that sounds really neat." And they're like, "Yeah, you just have to do all your work." She's like, "There's a lot of wasted time in school." So then I asked kind of my kids, and then over COVID, when we were homeschooling, I was like, "There's a lot of wasted time in school. Like you're waiting for the kids to settle, whatever." So I'm just like, it's the same thing. And then we send them to work and they have that same frame of mind and it's the exact same thing. So that's what I find. Like it's easy to like go to your like friend's office and hang around their water cooler and then you can easily lose half an hour. And it's like, oh man, no, I'd rather like focus hard, shut my phone off, shut the notifications and go through my list. Yeah. And yeah, it's such a game changer.
Another little trick that I use that might be tactical for your listeners is like, no matter how far in advance, like because days change, right? But every morning, like I'm a big proponent of a digital calendar just from all the benefits of it. But then every morning I transfer my digital calendar onto paper and almost turn it into a to-do list. And then it kind of incentivized me to, pull things ahead and just like be really efficient. It's like this just a little push for today, like get it done.
Yeah.
Instead of, again, that idea of like, oh, my goal is to get to like 8 p.m. again today.
Yeah, exactly.
And just like cruise through the hours.
Here's my to-do list. Like I always have this, I like long piece of paper. This is from yesterday, but I was just like, I do it. And then I'm like, okay, now that I'm done the important stuff, then I react to the emails because things happen. And then it's meetings I don't put on there for some reason. But it's funny because when I started creating a to-do list and checking it off, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm getting so much more done than just sitting and being like, okay, what do I have to do next?
Yeah, so it gives you a real like mission for the day.
Yeah, and having it in front and seeing it's like, oh my gosh, I did a lot of work today. Okay, go home.
Right. So. Well, and I was just talking to somebody else about this the other day too. This like, in my type of business, the work today doesn't necessarily lead to a reward today. Like you're doing in all entrepreneurialism, you've got to put in a lot of work today and then the reward's way down there. So you need to have some way of saying you did a good job today.
Yeah.
And that's what the to-do lists are today too. It's like you can get home and feel like, I'm entitled to the night off because I crushed it today.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't book a huge sale or I didn't, move whatever variable forward, but you can say like, I put in a solid day. A lot of people, I don't know that they can say that when they get home. They, you put in 8 hours.
Yeah, you were
but
there.
Did you put in a solid day? I don't know. So I think having those little to-do lists is a really good way to self-check and feel good. Like now, okay, I can have a couple hours off, or I can leave early because I'm done all my work.
Yeah.
Versus I'm just gonna like sit here and watch the clock get to 5.
Yeah.
Which is the employee mindset.
Yes, the employee mindset is horrible. Another video I saw you do, and it kind of ties into this, is the triggered versus the reoccurring process.
Yeah.
You want to speak about that a little bit?
Well, so I'm a systems geek. Like, then that comes from my background. My computer programming degree was actually called computer programming and systems analysis. And if you know anything about either of those topics, like, all computer programming is just making steps. Like, that's literally all it is. And then, analyzing a system to figure out the most efficient way to do those steps. And so if we can get anything down to a process, it's going to be more efficient. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, if you're a solopreneur, it doesn't seem as important because it's like, why am I going to make myself checklists for things I know how to do? Yeah. But it really becomes important if you ever plan on hiring an assistant or building a team. Like, at the end of the day, a business really is just its binder of checklists. Yeah. Outside of that, like, that you've got your people, but the people could come and go. The business is really, if you're going to go to sell it to somebody, you're selling your systems and processes. And so I've really geeked out on this, from the very beginning of my career. I joke, I even have this, like, I had this, like, meta exercise in my head. I was like, if I could just write a checklist that taught you to write checklists, then I'd have it all figured out, right? And I have this document. It's like literally a checklist system that teaches you how to systemize anything else in your business. And I take this approach with everything. It helps with time management too, because it lets you do things in the right order, stay organized, do things at the right time, in the right sequence. Little things like, even like, I have a vacation property, there's a checklist for when you arrive, there's a checklist for when you leave. Yeah. Every month I do my own personal financials for my own, like, home accounts, but also the corps that our family owns. So there's, like, print this document, balance this account, like, and just not having to learn something a second time. We were talking about aviation before we got on, but man, there's an industry that's only checklists, right? Literally. Because of how much safety is needed and how much, like, you can't do things wrong. The consequences are too high. Yeah, you miss one thing, you might die, and you might take a lot of people with you. Like, for sure. And it's like, as long as, and it also provides, like, this. Now, if you have customers too, it's going to provide that consistent level of service. I joke, in the real estate industry, like, if you do a la carte service, that's great, except if you get a referral. Now, that person that recommended you probably told them about what they did for you. Yeah. And if you're not delivering the same thing to everybody, you get someone a big bottle of champagne as a closing gift, and the next person you don't. Now they're let down because of the process. So I think, building, whether they're very simple, set of steps, not getting caught up in, like, the project management tools and stuff. These can just be in a notepad or on paper somewhere, but they're just the checks and balances. Your question was about triggered versus recurring, and that's just the way to think about, there's really only two ways to start a process. Either, like, something happens that kicks it off, so that's a triggered checklist. So in our business, that might be, I got a new person that wants to sell their house, or we just got a deal together, or I'm running an open house this weekend. Or, the one I use every week would be, like, my weekly action checklist. So there's certain things I do every Monday, do every Tuesday, do every Wednesday. And you can run your business on these two things, whether it's, a system is recurring on whatever frequency, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, or it's being kicked off because something else in your business happened. Yeah. I love the processes, because when I first started, I had no process. It was like, if someone wanted a quote, I would type up a quote, send it, type up another quote for the next guy, and it was such a waste of time. And then one day I was like, okay, I need one quote that I can just change certain information, and I need to, like, do it within a 24-hour turnaround. And I just kind of created a checklist. That was my first process. And once that happened, I was like, oh my gosh, that was a game changer. Like, it saved me hours per week. For sure. And then it just makes things easy. Now, if I had someone else come in, guess what? It's going to be the exact same process, same lingo. It's going to be my voice or whatever. So that is so handy. And then the other thing, when I hired my first employee, like, the training was, like, really, like, here and there. And as a joke, for the last person I hired, so I have 4 people now, she was like, how was your training? And I'm like, no, I got the training under control now, because now I have, like, with her, I was like, I don't know. It was really responsive. Like, she's like, oh, how do you do this again? Oh, I don't have the login for this. But now it's like, okay, here's the login document. Here you go. Here's what we do over here. And it's just, like, a lot easier. Not perfect yet. I'm still kind of, like, learning that part of things. But it's really interesting. Oh, just in case.
So that's why I'm like, processes are awesome, not only because you literally save so much time, and although you have to put a little time into creating the process, it's not that big of a deal, but because of the handoff. So for me this year, I was like putting in too many hours. I'm like, was working Saturdays, some Sundays, and I'm like, okay, I can't do it. I need to hire someone else because I want to work on the business, not in. So I hired her, handed kind of, here's what we do. And then I was able to step back and work again, as opposed to like creating and like just being haphazard now for the 4th time. So yeah, it's crazy how much time it saves and energy and effort.
Yeah, and you feel like you've created something too. At the end of the day, you're like, okay, this is how we do it. Like that was one of the big things in the coaching community, was like coming back and creating like the Purple Bean way, right? And that's what makes you stand apart. And you can take an idea then, once you have these set up, if you have like all your business triggers and your recurring processes, now every time, this is the magical part, is like if you get to this moment and you have, they don't have to be perfect, but you've got them somewhere. Then if something screws up, we have this like mantra, we're going to blame the process, not the person, right? As long as everyone's following the system. So then we just look, okay, what happened and where could we add a step or two to the system so this never happens again? Either it's an input issue, a quality assurance check somewhere, or it was a communication issue. So that's like every mistake becomes an opportunity to make the business better. And then every time you're watching a webinar or you have an interesting conversation, you're like,
there you go.
And you have a way to improve the business. You're just like, which process does this go into? It makes like growth so much easier too. That you can just, you're winning whether you're messing up or you're having good ideas. It's like, it doesn't matter. You're just constantly improving the business system in the process and making the 2nd and 3rd time you have to do something, oh my gosh, like so much easier.
It's way easier, the other thing that's really interesting about just like the reoccurring. So I kind of set up my week. Like I know I have my Wednesday morning meeting, no matter what, that's going to happen. And I have these things like, but before, and I had a business coach who's like, and it sounded so boring because he's like, no, like I know you want free time and I know you came for freedom, but like you're not going to grow if you don't do this, and you need to have your days and your weeks and your recurring, and then you have a room for reacting. And I was like, I don't know, man, you're so scheduled. I don't like that. It doesn't fit my vibe.
Right.
But then now 5 years in, I'm so like scheduled, and that's how I'm able to grow and move. And that's what I say now to other people. They're like, I became a business owner for freedom. I'm like, I know, but that freedom's going to kill you. Like you need to rein it in a little bit. I'm telling you, if you have weekly things, first of all, A, you know they're happening, so you put them into your schedule, and B, you don't let anyone down because you know already, okay, my time is segmented here and here and here. So you're not like double booking and stuff like that. So I think that's really, I just love the processes. It's something I never thought I would like geek out on because I had never been a list person, but now I very much am.
Yeah, but you're a deliverables person, right? You want your stuff to be, at a really high level. And I think that connects to the time management side of things too. Like if for example, like I also have, weekly recurring meetings. Everybody else gets to show up to them, and I have to prep for them and do a post debrief, right? So there's the time block in the calendar that's for the meeting, and somewhere the day before or 2 days before or something, there's the prep time block, and then afterwards there's the post meeting, my deliverables. I got to download the files, get them over to the videographer, get them uploaded to the drive, and all this stuff. And so once you really fill your calendar with all those commitments, you realize, there's not as much freedom as you think. So you're more like protective of that time. You're not just doing the have a minute meetings and the random lunches, because you want that freedom for your life, not just like, I think we get overcommitted is the other thing if we don't see it in that calendar. So it's not about being like every minute of the day is so disciplined. Like you can have a 4-hour time block that says you're off. Right? And that's as important.
That's why I actually don't have a digital calendar, and people are always so confused. So I'm like, let me pull out my actual real book, and they're like, how? You're so techie. I'm like, not for this. I need to see it. I need to write it down, because then I can picture it in my mind. So they think that's really, really funny. All right, well, I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Coming out, and I want to tell everyone how to get in contact with you. I'll put it on the bottom of the screen. But
just type my name into any platform or Google, and you'll track me down on your favorite platform.
Okay, sweet. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, cheers.